Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Trying Little Tenderness. Our guest for this evening is a wonderful, wonderful friend. And I guess I should say partner in business, Mr. Norman Weeks. Welcome.
How you doing, LaVonne?
I'm doing great. Welcome to Try Little Tenderness. I have been putting this interview off, but so excited because it's almost like a Christmas present.
Yeah.
So excited to introduce Mr. Weeks to the world here on Try Little Tenderness, but I'm sure he's not a stranger to the world, as you will find out here. So, Mr. Weeks, I want you to take a moment and introduce yourself to everyone on Try Little Tenderness.
I'm Norman Weeks, producer, songwriter, I guess, piano player, if you want to say it that way. Somebody who's been around for a while.
Someone that's been around for a while. A gentleman who can make a piano sing, come alive. It's such a art in just watching him play, and then to close your eyes and listen to him play. I guess, because you all know what I do as the erogenous coach, it's almost like listening to him make love to the piano. You know, it just I have to go there.
I've been told that.
Yes, that's what it is, and it just comes alive, and he's so, I hate to say animated, but just so intricate with it.
Well, it's the love of the art.
The love of the art.
Anything you love, you put your best in it.
And you do. And you do. Well, Norman, please share with us, what was your inspiration in creating one of the many avenues that you have? For example, one I know that you love is the Spirit of Jazz.
The Spirit of Jazz was an idea that I came up with, that where I wanted to infuse spiritual music with improvisations and modulations. I found that a lot of musicians who were spiritual were not technical. Mm-hmm. And a lot of musicians who were technical were spiritual. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to infuse the two to show that they could actually work together. You know, and that was basically my main purpose for doing that. I wanted to do the kind of music that was simple enough that anybody could understand, yet technical enough that a monster musician could understand.
And on the Spirit of Jazz, if you turn on the station, I love it because you have different people singing all types of songs, different genres. Is Mac Tonight? Is that the name of the song?
Yeah, Mac Tonight. Yeah, Mac Tonight. Yeah.
And the video and the different places that you film the videos in.
Yeah.
Those are all your creations?
Yes. When we first started the Spirit of Jazz, the concept of video was not there until I think when I did my third CD. Mm-hmm. We did a sort of a tribute to Frank Sinatra.
Right.
And I said, wow, I wonder if I could do a Fly Me to the Moon video. That would be different than something you haven't seen. And we tried it, and it worked. And we got a lot of responses from it, both nationally and internationally. I said, wow, this could work. And then we just started shooting video after video. And I guess up now we're up to about 25 maybe, and counting.
And counting.
Well,
share with us what it is to be internationally known.
LaVonne, let me say this. I never got into this for the fortune of fame. Mm-hmm. I never really wanted to be known. I was never a stage person, the person who got out front. I always wanted to sort of be the person in the background. It was the love of the art. So, becoming internationally known was something that just happened. It happens over time. You don't really have to put it out there. You put it out there and you let it happen. And eventually somebody says, oh, wow, this guy's here to stay. I always tell musicians all the time when they want to go in and record, I say, you really don't want to record your first CD. What you want to do is record your fifth and your sixth and your seventh. In other words, that gives you, that puts you out there internationally. They have to pay attention to you after that. Yeah, they have to.
So have you traveled overseas yet?
Well, we've traveled in some perspective overseas. I'm not really the kind of person who likes to travel a lot. I'm a homebody.
Okay.
A lot of my music is overseas. I think I'm featured now in about 26 different countries. A lot of background music television shows. We just did a song for a foreign movie. We've done several sound bites for different television shows that you see that you never knew I did. So though it's international, I try to kind of be laid back because I really don't. I'm really a shy person by nature. I know you don't believe that. I'm really a shy person by nature, and I don't like public. It's funny that you said that because I know a lot of people who are artists, and they can't, because they're so famous, they can't walk down the street.
Right.
I want to be able to go in the park and sit down and feed pictures.
Right.
That somebody shoving a piece of paper in my face and give me an autograph, or follow me around with a camera. I never wanted it. Never wanted it.
So you won't share with us some of the jingles or movie soundtracks that you might be on?
I did a movie soundtrack about I think his name was Philo. It was Philo. A lot of people don't know I did that. Yeah, he was a serial killer. It was his old name. Yes, I did it, but a lot of people, I could call it back, and nobody knew I did it. I just sent it in, and it was done. Yeah, I did the soundtrack.
Wow, that is just amazing. I mean, and jingles?
I've done jingles for soda commercials, for food commercials, for websites, music that you hear in elevators. A lot of times you hear music in elevators.
That's you.
That's me.
Give us, give us one jingle. Give us a jingle.
I did one years ago for DC radio station WHUR. The background music where they're playing "To God Be the Glory."
Yeah.
Well, that's me. And if I never told you, you wouldn't have known it. And I think it's been on the air for like 20, 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Been out there.
Yeah.
20 or 30 years.
It's been on the air for like 20, 30 years.
Well, Norma, what is your, with all your vast experience, what is your brand?
Some people have called it eclectic.
I agree.
Some people have called it free spirit or free spiritual. I like to call it me. I'm a very free-willed, loving kind of person, and I try to express that in the way I write and the way I compose. So I don't really call it, though a lot of people call it jazz. I really don't call it jazz. I call it LaVonne Weeks. Okay. And I'm not being arrogant or anything when I say that. But it was funny when I first started putting out my CDs. I sat down and I said, who do I want to sound like? I had a lot of musical influences. I liked Liberace. I liked Peter Nero. I was crazy about Oscar Peterson and Earl Garner. And I said, who do I want to sound like? Chick Corea. And I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to sound like me.
Wow.
So I kind of pulled it together, and I produced the kind of music that I would like to hear. And it's become very successful.
I'm just totally blown. I love good, clean piano music.
Yeah.
And I've had several friends that I've tried to get back to the piano and sit down and just make a CD of good, clean piano music. And they don't believe me. It will sell.
It will.
Because the music is so, what is the auto-tune and this, that, and the other. It's so cloudy now that you can't hear the crispness of the music that I hear when you play.
It takes away from the musicianship. I like electronics. I love a lot of keyboards, but it takes away from the actual technique of the musicianship, because now you can kind of add notes, and you can take notes, you can change keys without actually changing keys.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, here we go again. And then, but what happens is, if you take a musician like that, and you put them out in kind of get all on stage, once nobody but them, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Which is why I was saying, leading up to when you said that you like Liberace, not too many African Americans know Liberace, let alone like Liberace. You say, I love Liberace. I can sit there just listening.
The first time I saw that guy play, I was young. I was like, oh wow.
Right, right.
He is actually rolling up and down that piano.
Yes, yes.
And even though he was very comical in what he did, he had a really solid technique in his playing.
Yes.
So he's actually doing this.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I was sharing with my husband when they did the movie about his lifestyle, and I said, if you got past that, and just listen to him play, it was awesome. It was awesome. And again, that's just good, clean music that our youth now have no clue of the art. So, what would you tell the youth? What your vision statement was? How did you envision creating music for Norman Weeks? What was your vision statement?
Well, my vision was to create something that was, and as I said before, something that was about me, not being self-centered. But I thought I had something to offer the world. It was funny because, like I said, I wanted to pattern myself after this one and that one. But I said, I may not can do what they do, but they can't do what I do.
True.
I always had a problem, and I'll show you this. I have very little short, stubby fingers. Most piano players have long fingers that roll them down, and I can't roll the down like they do, but they can't do the short rolls like I do.
Okay.
So I said, wow, I can do that. And it's when I actually got to myself and said, I'm going to do what I do best, and it actually worked. And it became because of that, it was hard for them to copy me.
Right.
And I got a lot of respect in the industry because of that.
I guess you're right. But it's something you said about do what you do best.
Do what you do best.
That's like find your dream, find your niche.
Yeah.
And you do it the best you can with your passion, and no one can take that from you.
I got 100 stories about it. I got one in particular. I never forget this one. I had produced a recording back in 1982, and I thought I wanted to sing. So I produced a recording and I sang it. And on the night that we debuted the album, I went out on stage. I had on a suit, shirt and tie, the whole nine. And I looked at the audience and I saw thousands of faces looking at me. I sang the song and I walked off stage and I said, I'm never going to do that again.
Why?
It just wasn't me. It wasn't me. I wasn't performing. I've never been a performer in that particular aspect. Now, when I went behind the keyboard and sat and played, it was a different thing.
Same people.
Same people.
Same thousands.
Same thousands. I still play with thousands behind a keyboard. And when you said know your niche, that's what I'm trying to say here. My niche wasn't what I saw. My niche was what I was comfortable with.
Right. Okay.
So when I came off that stage and got behind the piano, I said, okay, this is where I belong. And I've never left it.
Now, they can take the piano and put it in the center and put the same light on it.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. You're right. Yeah,
and then you can make the piano sing.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's the niche.
Right.
That's the niche. That's the niche.
That is amazing that you would just walk away like that.
I said, no, I'm never going to do this again, and I never did. I never got on the stage like that again in that capacity. I was trying to promote myself as a singer and an entertainer. So that's not me. I do improvisations.
Improvisation.
I do improvisations, and that's where I leave it at. I don't try to copy nobody, and I love those guys. I've met a lot of musicians that's been out there for years. I love them. I love what they do, but just stick me right there, and that's why I love it.
Well, that's a good segue to the next question. Share with us some of the great names that you have worked with.
I have been on the road. I went on the road when I was 17 years old. I left here, and we were on tour with Kool and the Gang. We were on tour with OJ, Stylistics, Shy Lights, Al Green, James Brown, Dan Snipe, and my favorites was Paul DeFunk. We opened up I was like a kid in a candy store. It was like all these famous people were around me, and I was like, wow. And then I found out they were just ordinary people, you know, they tied their shoes same way I did.
Right.
You know, and the same problems they had, you know, they didn't like broccoli, neither did I. And,
Okay.
You know, so, you know, I was kind of starstruck when I was meeting certain people, and people would shake my hand. You see the TV, like they shake me, and I would go, it's actually him. You know, then after a while, they kind of found out that we were all in this together.
Right.
You know, they were a musician, and I was a musician. They were more popular than me. They were more known than I was, but I was just, you know.
On the same level.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were on tour with, and I love Parliament Funkadelic, and I love the OJs, so when you were on tour with them, this was before or after seminary?
This was before seminary.
Okay.
Before seminary.
So before seminary, going through all that, what got you to, what led you to seminary?
I wanted to understand the concept of spirituality. I wanted to know where it came from, why it was. I've always been curious about everything. Even as a child, I was curious about everything. And when I got a chance to study in the seminary, I did it. I studied for a couple of years, and I got a couple of degrees. And when I came out, it gave me a better concept, a better knowledge of where I wanted to go spiritually. You know, I'm not talking about a religion.
Right.
I'm talking about, you know,
Spirituality.
spirituality, the level that I wanted to go to.
Now, what? We're going to go to a break. All right, we'll be right back.